The chilly morning air in Chicago made every breath feel sharp, a real reminder that life could be tough, especially for anyone stuck outside the big commuter rail station on Madison Street. People hurried past, bundled up in thick jackets with scarves wrapped high, determined to get where they needed to be. Among them, a 9-year-old boy named Lucas sat quietly on a flattened cardboard box, keeping close to the entrance but never blocking the path. His shoes were too small, one of the laces broken, and his hands had that pinkish color you get from cold. But Lucas didn't mind the commuters or their quick glances. He had an old beat-up notebook on his knees, and he drew in it every morning, scratching out little pictures of trains, the skyline, or whatever came to mind. While grown-ups moved with purpose, barely noticing him, Lucas sat still and watched with curious eyes. He didn't hold out his hand for change or bother anyone. Instead, he just soaked everything in, quietly listening to footsteps and snippets of conversation. There was a kind of sadness in his gaze, like he'd seen more than any kid should, but also this small spark of hope, almost like he believed deep down that something amazing might still be waiting for him if he stayed patient. Across the street, inside a black Lexus, Michael stared out through the windshield at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. The radio murmured quietly in the background, but he barely heard it over the thoughts running through his mind. Michael's face showed the strain of long nights and the burden of decisions he never wanted to make. Grief and exhaustion weighed on his features, etched into the lines around his eyes and mouth. In the back seat, his daughter Emma, wrapped tightly in a worn blue blanket, sat quietly in her wheelchair. She watched the clouds drifting slowly above the city buildings, her gaze never quite meeting her father's. Since the accident 4 months earlier, their lives had changed completely. Now, hospital appointments filled their calendar, and each visit felt like another hope being set aside. Emma rarely spoke these days. The world outside the window seemed far away from the reality of pain, therapy, and the awkward silence that had grown between her and her dad. When they arrived, Michael would gently lift Emma from the car, careful not to jostle her legs. He held her close, almost as if holding his breath too, worried that one sudden mistake would only make things worse. Each small act was filled with love, but also the fear that they were still just learning how to go on. As Michael hurried through the main entrance to the train station, focused only on getting Emma inside before the chill sank in deeper, he didn't notice Lucas sitting against the wall by the newspaper stand. But Lucas noticed everything. The careful way Michael carried Emma, how he double-checked the straps on her wheelchair with shaking hands, the heaviness in his steps. Lucas also caught the distant look in Emma's eyes, the kind that made it seem like she was somewhere far away, even if her body was right here in Chicago. The tension between them practically hung in the cold air. While most people didn't give Lucas a second glance, he sat up straight and looked right at Michael. With a voice that was quiet but held a strange certainty, Lucas called out, "Sir, I can help your daughter walk again." He wasn't loud, but somehow his words cut through all the noise from the commuters and city traffic. Michael stopped in his tracks. The suitcase he had been dragging nearly tipped over. At first, he felt a flash of disbelief at hearing something so out of place from a child who looked barely older than Emma. But there was a tone in Lucas's voice, a calm, steady confidence that made Michael pause and actually turn to look. For a brief second, curiosity took over his doubts, and he stood there unsure but unable to just walk away. Even as Michael followed Emma through the hospital's busy hallways, checked in with the nurses, and sat with doctors who spoke in careful, practiced tones, he couldn't shake off what that kid outside had said. Every time the doctors gave him another update, more waiting, more tests, nothing definite, his mind replayed Lucas's words. It was odd, really. Michael felt embarrassed for even thinking about it, but he couldn't help recalling the seriousness in that boy's eyes, the way he didn't sound like he was joking or looking for attention. Emma barely spoke that afternoon. She endured the usual scan and poking around, eyes fixed on fluorescent lights or lost out the window, while Michael tried to be strong and supportive. But his thoughts kept drifting back to the street and to a boy with patched-up boots who offered something the doctors never did. A real, raw hope, untouched by medical jargon or statistics. It was such an unlikely promise that it almost hurt to remember, but still, it lingered. While Emma went through yet another series of exams, Michael found himself wondering if there was any reason Lucas singled them out. Was it random? Or maybe, just maybe, there was a reason Hope had chosen this strange, uncertain way to come back into their lives. When Michael and Emma left the station that afternoon, the sky had turned a shade of pale grey and the crowds had thinned. There near the same wall sat Lucas, exactly where Michael remembered him. It was almost as if the boy had known Michael would look for him after a long day of worry. For a moment, neither of them said anything. Michael hesitated, glancing down at Emma, who looked curious but stayed quiet, pulling her blanket around her shoulders a little tighter. Breaking the silence, Michael finally asked, "Why did you say you could help my daughter? What made you think that?" His words came out a bit harsh, edged with all the doubt he carried from inside. Lucas shrugged gently, not looking offended or nervous. He explained that his mom had been a therapist, someone who always believed the body can remember how to move, even after something terrible. She used to say that sometimes people just need someone else to believe it's possible, and from there, they find their way forward. Lucas didn't pretend he could promise a miracle, but he could promise to try. For Michael, this wasn't some wild claim or magic solution, but a small piece of hope, a chance to try something different. Even if he doubted, part of him wondered if trying might be worth it. Just this once. Lucas seemed so sure, and somehow that certainty stuck with Michael even after they said goodbye. Not wanting to get any more involved, but unable to simply brush it all off, Michael offered a half-hearted suggestion before leaving. "How about we meet at Millennium Park tomorrow morning?" He expected Lucas to just nod and forget about it, since the kid probably had plenty of more pressing things to worry about. For Michael, it was a polite way to close the door, to make this whole encounter feel like something he had some control over. They parted ways, and Michael loaded Emma back into their car. The evening traffic on Michigan Avenue was busy, horns blaring and headlights reflecting in every direction, but all Michael could think about was the strange hope he had just glimpsed. Back at home in their small apartment, something was different. As Emma unpacked her bag, she looked at her dad and said, "Do you think I'll walk again?" That boy seemed like he really believed it. Michael was caught off guard because it was the first real question Emma had asked in months, without any trace of fear or defeat. For the first time, hope didn't just feel like empty talk, but like something quietly possible, sparked by the honest words of a 9-year-old who believed trying mattered. That Sunday morning, Lake Michigan's breeze was gentle, and the city was just waking up. Lucas sat waiting near the Crown Fountain at Millennium Park, a faded backpack beside him and a clean towel neatly laid out under the big maple tree. He had arrived early, wanting to be prepared. His kit was a mix of things, some homemade, balance tools, a tennis ball with a smiley face drawn on it, and a small notebook filled with careful notes in big, crooked writing. He looked up every time someone passed, just in case. Michael actually hesitated before crossing the pavement with Emma beside him. He felt awkward, holding onto a mix of protectiveness and doubt, and kept his grip tight on Emma's wheelchair. "Hindles?" Emma seemed more open, scanning the park, and then Lucas, curiosity lighting her face. Lucas greeted them quietly, offering a patient smile. He took his time, explaining each step, how they would try simple stretches first, then practice, holding onto the towel for balance, promising nothing would hurt and Emma could stop at any moment. Throughout it all, he asked Emma's permission before every move and described exactly what she might feel. Michael was surprised by the careful pace, the real respect in how Lucas spoke to his daughter. He found himself unable to interrupt, even as he held on to skepticism. Something about Lucas's genuine kindness put him at ease, if only for those few moments. As Lucas guided Emma through the stretches and encouraged her to grip the towel, he kept up a steady, gentle conversation. He didn't just focus on her movements. He asked whether she liked the Taste of Chicago festival, if she had a favorite baseball team, or what she thought about the bean-shaped sculpture everyone loved to photograph. At first, Emma gave one-word answers, barely looking at him. But as the minutes passed, she started to loosen up, making small jokes and even teasing Lucas about his misshapen tennis ball. Her eyes weren't so clouded anymore. Michael stayed close by, arms lightly crossed, unsure what to feel. His doubt lingered, always ready to jump in if Emma looked the least bit uncomfortable. But he couldn't help noticing the shift happening right in front of him. In between small talk and laughter, Emma's hands began to relax their grip on the wheelchair. There was one moment where her foot twitched, and for an instant, Michael thought maybe he'd imagined it. But then Emma actually smiled, a genuine shy smile that he hadn't seen on her face since before the accident. There was nothing sudden, nothing magical. But in that easy, playful atmosphere, a sliver of hope started to take root. As the session wound down, Lucas carefully helped Emma settle back into her wheelchair and made sure she was comfortable. Michael, still feeling a bit awkward about the whole thing, reached into his pocket and pulled out a few bills, holding them out to Lucas. "Here," he said, trying to sound casual. "Let me pay you for your time." Lucas looked up, shaking his head. "Thanks, but you don't have to. Emma's smile is worth more than anything else," he replied simply, and his words caught Michael off guard. It was so rare for him to meet someone who didn't have an angle, who just wanted to help because it felt right. Michael felt a little embarrassed, not quite knowing what to say. Emma, however, seemed lighter than he had seen her in a long time. She asked right then if they could do it again next Sunday. Lucas agreed without hesitation, promising to bring new ideas for fun exercises. From that weekend on, everything felt different. Sunday mornings turned into something the three of them looked forward to. Michael's skepticism faded into cautious curiosity, and Emma started to talk about the future with real excitement. In a quiet way, hope found its way back into their lives. Before long, meeting at Millennium Park on Sunday mornings became something natural for all of them. Each session brought tiny changes. Sometimes Emma would wiggle a toe, other times her legs would tense for just a moment, and every now and then, a genuine laugh would burst out loud enough to make strangers turn and smile. Lucas was patient with both Emma and Michael, showing them simple stretches and movements that seemed easy but took tons of concentration. He always explained that celebrating the little steps mattered as much as hoping for big progress. For Emma, these wins, no matter how small, felt huge. It was not just about walking again. It was about feeling capable, connected, and alive. Michael, who had started off just standing by and watching, soon found himself kneeling beside Emma, holding her hand, shaping her foot, or counting out loud with Lucas. He wanted to learn, not just from Lucas, but with Emma, how to do every motion correctly, how to encourage her, and how to spot the small signs of improvement others might miss. Their routine built trust in ways Michael had never expected, making him more sure of the path they were taking together. Without saying much, the three grew closer, becoming a small, steady team, quietly cheering each other on, no matter how hard the days got. One Sunday, things did not go the way anyone had hoped. Emma rolled up beside the big maple, her face set and stormy. She barely glanced at Lucas or Michael, folding her arms and letting out a sharp sigh. It had been weeks of tiny changes, and that morning, nothing seemed better. Every effort felt pointless, and when Lucas gently suggested they start their warm-up, Emma flat out refused. "I'm tired of this," she said, her voice shaking. "It's always the same. I try and nothing happens." Michael hovered nearby, lost for words, heart cracking a little as he watched his daughter's hope collapse in front of him. He wanted to fix it, but had no idea how. Lucas did not look disappointed or embarrassed. Instead, he sat beside Emma, lowering his voice. He talked about his own bad days, about the times when hope was hard to find, times he himself had wanted to give up. He described how sometimes anger and fear showed you just how much you wanted something. Gently, without pressure, he encouraged Emma to give it one more try, just for herself. After a long pause, Emma agreed. Her toes twitched, and then her foot wiggled ever so slightly. It was all they needed, a small new start, and everyone smiled for real. That night, back at their apartment overlooking the city skyline of Chicago, the atmosphere felt strange in a good way. There was laughter spilling out from Emma's room, a sound so unexpected and fresh that Michael stopped mid-step in the hallway just to listen. He realized it had been ages since their home heard real laughter, the kind that fills up a whole space and lingers in the air. For a long while, their apartment had just been a place to sleep, a quiet bubble of worry and old sorrow, where every corner seemed to remember what they had lost. But now, with every giggle and shout of "Dad, come look at this," the apartment started to change. Michael moved easier through the rooms, noticing little things he had stopped seeing: Emma's artwork on the fridge, her collection of baseball caps, even shoes in a heap by the door. He felt lighter, like maybe he did not have to double-check every decision or hang on to guilt for every moment that went wrong. Instead of mourning the past, Michael started letting himself imagine good days ahead. If the pain and fear were fading, it was because hope, sparked in a park and growing every Sunday, was finally taking root right there at home. As the weeks passed, Michael found himself growing more and more curious about Lucas. There was something about the way the kid handled things, so calm and patient beyond his years, that just did not add up to your average teenager. Michael kept his ears open during their meetings at the community center and even asked a couple of the staff if they knew much about Lucas. He hoped for answers, but got only little scraps of stories. Someone mentioned Lucas often came in alone, dragging a battered backpack and never asking for rides home. Others recalled seeing him with his mother, a woman who always looked tired but smiled at everyone. The odd thing was, nobody could say exactly where Lucas lived. He never talked about a neighborhood, and when holidays rolled around, he just kept coming to the center as if nothing special was happening anywhere else. Michael found an old newsletter with Lucas's name listed for a volunteer award and a single line about his family facing tough times. The more Michael pieced together, the more respect and admiration he felt. Gratitude slowly pushed out any discomfort. Lucas, with all that mystery and strength, was no longer just a helper. He had become a vital thread in their story, binding their recovery together. As Emma's progress became more noticeable at the community center, people started to take interest. It was not just the regulars or staff anymore. Soon, everyone seemed to notice how her laughter filled the big room, or the way her legs pushed her wheelchair just a little faster every week. One afternoon, a nurse passing by in the hallway caught sight of Emma grinning and swinging her feet back and forth. She stopped, surprised, then asked Emma a few questions. When Emma told her about Lucas and the Sunday sessions in Millennium Park, the nurse listened closely. She ended up sharing the story with her co-workers, and in no time, word got around about this quiet teenager who was helping kids find the strength to move again. The following Sunday, when Lucas and Emma showed up, they found two new families waiting in the grass. Parents looked tired but hopeful, and two small kids eyed Emma's chair with a mix of curiosity and nervousness. Lucas barely hesitated. He greeted everyone warmly and soon split his time between Emma and the newcomers, showing simple stretches, giving encouragement, and making space for each child to feel important. Lucas treated each kid with the same patience he had always shown Emma, reminding everyone there that hope could be shared. Gradually, Millennium Park felt less like a simple city space and more like a community hub for families hoping for a fresh start. Every weekend, more parents and kids showed up, turning the quiet corner near the playground into a lively gathering with folding chairs and homemade snacks spread out on blankets. Volunteers from the neighborhood joined in without hesitation. Some came with bags of apples and sandwiches. Others offered upbeat stories or a helping hand with equipment. Where things had once been quiet and lonely, now there was the hum of conversation, bursts of laughter, and the steady encouragement of grown-ups cheering as children managed new little victories. A finger twitch, a leg stretch, a grin after. Trying something hard, Lucas, without ever planning it, became the steady core of this new group. He never acted like a leader or put himself first. Instead, he showed each child the same respect and attention, making sure everyone got to try, to learn, and to feel proud. He greeted families by name, asked about siblings, and always looked for the small ways to help kids feel seen. Even as more people thanked him or praised his work, Lucas kept his eyes on the kids and the small moments that mattered most. Sure, deep down, that kindness was enough. Soon, the growing crowd and the buzzing energy around Millennium Park caught the eye of a local reporter. She showed up one breezy Saturday with a notebook, chatting with families and taking pictures of kids laughing on the grass. Her story ran in the city's weekend paper a few days later, centering on the difference Lucas had made in so many young lives. People all over Chicago read about the boy who never talked much about himself but always made time for others. That article struck a nerve. It was honest and warm, describing hope blooming out of hardship. But Lucas still felt uneasy. With all the attention, when the reporter came to thank him, Lucas quietly asked her to spotlight the kids' courage and the hard work of all the families rather than his own struggles. What happened next surprised everyone. More help poured in. Doctors from Northwestern Memorial offered to volunteer their skills at the Sunday gatherings. Physical therapists showed up with games and wheelchairs to share. Even a non-profit reached out to donate equipment and give advice. Watching this unfold, Lucas felt something shift inside. Since losing his mom, he had drifted along quietly, always feeling on the outside. But now, welcomed by this caring web of new friends, he realized he was not just surviving, he was a real part of something, and that made all the difference. Even as more families filled the park each week, Lucas always made sure that Sunday mornings began with Emma. He never let the crowd or the growing list of needs distract him from the girl whose journey had started it all. Their routine became something special. Simple stretches, trying out new moves, and sharing grins over small wins. There was a sense of quiet understanding between them, built on all those weeks spent together. Lucas did not need grand words. He offered encouragement in gentle ways, a steady hand or just a nod that said, "I see you." In return, Emma trusted him completely, knowing he would always make time for her no matter how busy things got. Michael noticed this too. Seeing the way Lucas cared for Emma, he felt something that went deeper than gratitude. Slowly, Michael invited Lucas into their lives beyond the park, first with shared lunches, then with a steady offer of a safe place if he ever needed one. It was not long before the apartment that once felt cold was now filled with new energy. There were footsteps in the hall, laughter in the kitchen, voices discussing plans for the next Sunday, and the unmistakable sound of hope, alive and moving through the rooms like sunlight in spring. One crisp Sunday morning, the sunshine streamed over Millennium Park as families gathered for their usual routine. Emma's face looked different that day. Her jaw was set and her eyes burned with focus, almost like she had made a decision she would not back down from. Lucas was already waiting for her by their usual spot, and Michael hovered nearby, doing his best to hide his nerves with casual jokes. After some warm-ups, Emma took a deep breath and quietly told them both that she wanted to try standing up. Lucas gave a reassuring nod, and Michael knelt beside her, ready to support but not lead. With both Lucas and Michael steady at her side, Emma grabbed the handlebars they had brought with them for practice. She paused for a moment, searching for confidence, and then slowly pushed herself up. For the first time since the accident, her legs held her, wobbly but strong. A hush spread across the grass as everyone realized what was happening, breaking only when Emma took her very first step forward. Laughter and cheers burst out, some people clapping, others tearing up as they witnessed what felt like a miracle. Every shaky movement Emma made was met with shouts of encouragement, and even the smallest steps were celebrated as if history was being made right there among friends. That evening, after the excitement had settled and the last rays of daylight slipped away, Lucas found himself in Michael's cozy kitchen, putting together peanut butter sandwiches for everyone. The sound of quiet laughter floated in from the living room, where Emma tried to retell her big moment, making everyone smile all over again. As Lucas tidied up the counter, Michael wandered in, still looking a little overwhelmed by the day. He paused for a second, his voice quiet but steady, to thank Lucas. Not just for what happened with Emma, but for everything. There was no speech or grand gesture, just the kind of honest words shared between people who have walked through difficult times together and come out stronger. Michael told Lucas he wanted their home to be a place where hope kept growing, just like what Lucas had sparked at the park. Lucas listened, feeling a quiet kind of pride, and gently reminded Michael that he owed his strength to the lessons from his mom, who always believed in kindness and never giving up. As they finished up the late snack, something small but important passed between them, a promise to keep this new purpose alive. The house that night felt close and safe, filled with respect, gratitude, and the understanding that they were all part of something much bigger now. As the weeks rolled by, Millennium Park took on a new meaning for families all around Chicago. What started quietly as a single boy's effort soon became a gathering spot filled with stories of new beginnings. On Sundays, people came early, some carrying folding chairs, others setting up tables with fresh fruit and juice boxes. Laughter and easy conversation floated across the grass while kids gave their best. At workouts and games, cheered on by a crowd that now felt like one big group of friends. Each new achievement, no matter how small, was met with applause and a feeling of hope. If someone managed a step or tried something they had only dreamed about, everyone noticed and celebrated together. Lucas, who once drifted through his days feeling invisible, found a sense of belonging he had never known before. Helping others get back on their feet brought out the best in him, and he realized that the park's growing community was as much his support as he was theirs. Now his own difficult story seemed less lonely, woven into something larger, showing everyone who gathered there that moving forward was possible. In the end, what they built at Millennium Park proved that nobody has to face tough times alone if they are willing to reach out and try again.